First contact's price. The crystalline spires of the Zexian Imperial Palace pierced the violet sky like frozen lightning, their surfaces refracting the light of 3 moons into a kaleidoscope of colors. Commander Sarah Chen stood at the viewport of her diplomatic vessel, her dark eyes reflecting the alien architecture before her. 10 years of interstellar diplomacy hadn't prepared her for this moment. "Commander, final approach clearance granted," her pilot announced, voice tight with tension. "The Zexians are particular about their protocols." Sarah smoothed down her midnight blue diplomatic uniform, adorned only with the silver Earth insignia on her collar. "Aren't they all, Rodriguez?" She managed a small smile. "Every species thinks they're the apex of evolution until humans prove them wrong." The Zexian Empire had dominated this sector of space for millennia, their technological superiority matched only by their infamous pride. Their ruling class, marked by their bioluminescent skin and extraordinary cognitive abilities, considered themselves above other species, and Prince Carix, their current ruler, was notorious for his dismissal of all potential diplomatic unions. The landing pad extended from the palace like a crystalline flower, their ship settling onto its surface with barely a whisper. Sarah took a deep breath, squaring her shoulders. The weight of humanity's future rested on this mission. Earth needed allies, especially with the Drachnid expansion pressing at their borders. The reception committee awaiting them was a study in controlled disdain. Tall, elegant Zexians with their characteristic shimming skin stood in perfect formation, their ceremonial robes catching the light. At their center stood Prince Carix himself, his presence commanding attention. The prince was everything the intelligence briefings had described and more. Nearly 7 feet tall, his skin pulsed with patterns of light that seemed to ripple like northern lights, a sign of his powerful psychic abilities. His eyes, entirely silver without pupils, fixed on Sarah with the cold interest of a scientist examining a particularly unremarkable specimen. "The human representative," he stated, his universal translator giving his words a musical quality that did nothing to warm their frost. "How quaint. The council insisted we grant you an audience, though I fail to see the purpose." Sarah had expected this. Arrogance was the universal language of empire. She stepped forward, executing a perfect Zexian greeting gesture she'd spent months practicing. "Your Radiance, humanity is honored by your willingness to receive us." She kept her voice steady, professional. "Though I wonder if such dismissal before dialogue serves your empire's interests." A ripple of shocked light patterns crossed the assembled Zexians. No one spoke to the prince this way. Carix's own bioluminescence flared briefly, the only sign her words had struck home. "You presume much, human," he said, the temperature of his voice dropping further. "Your species barely understands quantum folding. Your colonies number less than a dozen, and your military might is," his lip curled slightly, "negligible." Sarah met his gaze steadily. "And yet here I stand, on a world that has rejected 100 more advanced species. Perhaps that alone should interest you." For a long moment, silence hung between them like a drawn blade. Then, unexpectedly, Prince Carix's expression shifted minutely. "Interesting. You're either remarkably brave or remarkably foolish. Both traits humans seem to possess in abundance." He gestured toward the palace entrance. "Come then, Commander Chen. Show me what makes humanity worth my time." As Sarah fell into step beside the prince, she caught fragments of the Zexian courtier's thought speech, their surprise and disapproval radiating like static. But she also noticed something else. The prince's biolights had shifted to a pattern she hadn't seen in any of her briefings. Whether that was good or bad remained to be seen. The game had begun, and humanity's future might well depend on how she played it. The trial of minds. The Imperial testing chamber stretched before Sarah like the inside of a massive geode, its crystalline walls pulsing with neural reactive light. She stood at one end of the vast space, while Prince Carix observed from a hovering platform above, his biolights casting shifting shadows across the chamber. "The parameters are simple," Commander, his voice echoed through the chamber. 3 trials. 3 chances to prove humanity's worth. Fail any, and your petition for alliance dies here. Sarah nodded, her hand unconsciously touching the earth insignia on her collar. And if I succeed? A ripple of amusement passed through the watching Zexian court. Prince Carix's silver eyes narrowed slightly. Then perhaps humans are more than the primitive species we assumed. The first trial begins now. The air shimmered, and a holographic display materialized around Sarah, a 3-dimensional representation of a star system in crisis. A dying star, multiple inhabited planets, and limited resources. A classic no-win scenario. You have 15 minutes to save 1 billion lives, Carix announced. The star will go supernova. You have resources to evacuate 1 planet of 3. Choose. Sarah studied the simulation, her mind racing. This was exactly the kind of impossible choice the Zexians would present, not just a test of problem-solving, but of values. The expected solution would be to choose the most technologically advanced civilization, preserving the greatest achievement. Instead, she began rerouting power from the evacuation ships to the star itself. "What are you doing?" one of the Zexian observers demanded. "The star cannot be saved. This is madness." Sarah continued her work, fingers dancing through the holographic interface. Humanity learned long ago that the impossible just takes a little longer. She activated the final sequence just as the countdown reached 2 minutes. "I'm not saving the star. I'm using its own death to save everyone." The simulation showed her redirected evacuation ships creating a temporary quantum fold network, using the star's massive energy output to power an emergency transportation corridor. As the star exploded, the energy surge powered the network, allowing simultaneous evacuation of all 3 planets through the fold space. The chamber fell silent. Prince Carix's biolights pulsed rapidly, a sign of intense thought. "An unconventional solution," he finally said, "and extremely risky." The chances of success were better than choosing who lives and who dies, Sarah interrupted. Humanity's greatest strength isn't our technology or our intelligence. It's our refusal to accept no-win scenarios. The prince descended from his platform, approaching Sarah with measured steps. "You truly believe that, don't you? That sheer determination can overcome any obstacle. I believe that assuming something is impossible guarantees failure, and I believe that any species that stops trying to surpass its limitations stops growing." For the first time, Sarah saw something like real interest in those silver eyes. "The second trial will not be so easily solved with clever programming, Commander." "Good," Sarah smiled slightly. "I was hoping for a challenge." The second trial proved to be more personal. The chamber transformed into a perfect replica of the Earth's diplomatic court headquarters. Sarah found herself surrounded by familiar faces, her colleagues, her superiors, even her family. All speaking, all demanding different things, all presenting conflicting needs and priorities. "A leadership test," she murmured, recognizing the format, but knowing there had to be more to it. "Indeed." Carix's voice came from everywhere and nowhere. "But with a difference. We've studied your species' brainwave patterns. This simulation is being fed directly into your neural pathways. Everything you feel, every emotion, is real." Sarah felt it then, the overwhelming pressure of responsibility, the fear of failure, the personal cost of every decision. The Zexians weren't just testing her problem-solving abilities, they were testing her emotional resilience. For 3 hours that felt like days, she navigated crisis after crisis. Trade negotiations, military conflicts, personal appeals, all demanding immediate attention, all interconnected in subtle ways. The emotional strain was nearly unbearable, but Sarah refused to break. When the simulation finally faded, she was on her knees, sweat beading on her forehead. The chamber was silent except for her breathing. Prince Carix stood before her, his biolights pulsing in a pattern she'd never seen before. "Fascinating," he said softly. "You knew it was a simulation. yet you felt everything as if it were real. You suffered, yet you never once took the easy path. Sarah pushed herself to her feet, her legs shaking, but her voice steady. That's what leadership means to humans. We carry the weight. We feel the pain, but we keep going. Because others are counting on us. Even when those others are not your own species. The prince's question carried layers of meaning. Especially then. The stars don't care about our differences, your radiance. The void is vast and cold, and no species can face it alone forever. Something shifted in the prince's expression, a subtle change that nonetheless transformed his entire demeanor. Perhaps, he said slowly, we have been alone too long. But before Sarah could respond, alarms began blaring throughout the palace. The chamber's walls flashed urgent patterns of warning lights, and Carix's bioluminescence flared with sudden tension. It seems, he said grimly, that your third trial has arrived ahead of schedule. We are under attack. Betrayal's shadow. The Imperial Palace's defense systems hummed to life, crystalline walls shifting to combat configuration. Through the newly transparent sections, Sarah could see sleek attack vessels emerging from fold space, their design unmistakably Drachnid. Your old enemies, Sarah said, quickly assessing the situation. The same ones pressing at Earth's borders. Prince Carix's biolights pulsed with barely contained rage. Impossible. Our defensive grid should have detected their approach long before they emerged. His silver eyes narrowed. Unless they had help from inside, Sarah finished. She'd seen enough palace intrigue across the galaxy to recognize the signs. Your security protocols were compromised. The chamber shook with the impact of the first wave of attacks. Carix's hands flew across a control panel that materialized before him, his movements precise despite the chaos. Our primary defense grid is not responding. Someone has locked us out of the system. Sarah moved to his side, studying the alien interface. Your Radiance, I know this isn't the time for diplomacy, but my ship's systems might be compatible with yours. Earth has been developing countermeasures against Drachnid technology. For a moment, the prince's silver eyes met hers. In that gaze, she saw centuries of isolation and pride warring with immediate necessity. Another explosion rocked the palace. Do it, he commanded. Sarah activated her neural link to her ship's eye. Rodriguez, emergency protocols. Interface with the palace defense systems. Authorization, Chen Alpha 9. Connection establish. Rodriguez's voice came through clearly. Commander, I'm detecting multiple security breaches. Someone uploaded a virus into the palace mainframe hours ago. Can you bypass it? Negative. But there's something strange about the code. It's not purely Drachnid. There are elements of Zexian programming. Carix's biolights flared with sudden understanding. The High Council meeting this morning. Councillor Vex was unusually insistent about reviewing the defense protocols. Your own council member conspiring with the Drachnids. Sarah's mind raced through the implications. Why would they? Because some would rather see our empire fall than change. Carix's voice was bitter. The old guard fears what an alliance with humanity might mean. Our isolation has been our strength, but also our chains. Another blast, closer this time. Warning lights indicated the palace's shields were failing. Commander, Rodriguez reported, I can't break through the virus, but I might be able to create a temporary bridge between our systems. It would give us limited control of the defense grid. Do it, Sarah ordered. She turned to Carix. Your Radiance, I need you to trust me. Not as a human, not as a potential ally, but as someone who wants to prevent a massacre. The prince studied her for a long moment, his biolights shifting through complex patterns. Then he did something unprecedented. He removed the neural crown from his temples, the symbol of his absolute authority, and held it out to her. This will give you direct access to what remains of our systems, he said quietly. No outsider has ever been allowed to touch it. Sarah took the crown carefully, feeling its warm, living metal adjust to her neural patterns. Immediately, Her mind was flooded with data streams, countless security feeds, and the combined sensor input of thousands of defense drones. Rodriguez, implementing override sequence, she commanded. Reroute all power to the secondary defense grid. Ignore the primary systems entirely. What are you doing? Carix demanded, watching as sections of the palace went dark. Something impossible. Sarah smiled grimly. The virus has control of your main systems, so we're going to create a new one. Rodriguez, transmit the experimental Drachnid countermeasure protocols. Through the neural crown, Sarah felt the palace's systems responding, reorganizing themselves according to human programming principles. It was dangerous, unprecedented, the technological equivalent of performing surgery during an earthquake. The Drachnid ships pressed their attack, clearly expecting the palace's defenses to be completely paralyzed. Instead, they found themselves facing a hybrid defense system that combined Zexian crystalline technology with human adaptability. Impossible, one of the Zexian technicians breathed, watching as the palace's weapons came back online, operating on completely new protocols that the virus couldn't touch. Commander, Rodriguez warned, the power drain is massive. We can't maintain this configuration for long. Sarah's fingers flew across the holographic controls, her mind working in perfect synchronization with the palace systems through the neural crown. We don't need long. Your Radiance, I need your authorization to access the palace's quantum fold generators. Carix's eyes widened. You can't be suggesting a localized fold space bubble, Sarah confirmed. If we can't shoot them down fast enough, we'll send them somewhere else. The power requirements would be astronomical. It's never been attempted on this scale. Then we'll be the first. Sarah met his gaze steadily. Sometimes the impossible just takes two species working together. After what felt like an eternity, Carix nodded. His biolights synchronized with the palace systems, adding his own considerable psychic energy to the matrix. Throughout the palace, crystalline structures began to hum with power. The Drachnid ships, realizing something was wrong, began to retreat. But it was too late. Space itself seemed to fold around them, the fabric of reality bending to the combined will of human ingenuity and Zexian technology. In a flash of impossible light, the enemy fleet vanished, transported to a random point thousands of light years away. The sudden silence was deafening. Sarah removed the neural crown, her hands shaking slightly from the mental strain. She offered it back to Carix, but he made no move to take it. Keep it, he said softly. You've earned the right, and we'll need that connection for what comes next. Next. The prince's biolights pulsed with determination, finding the traitors in my council, and perhaps redefining what's possible when our species work together. Pride and prejudice among stars. The Imperial Council chamber was a storm of shifting biolights and barely contained outrage. 12 of the most powerful Zexians in the Empire sat in their crystalline seats, their combined psychic energy making the air itself feel heavy. At the center of the chamber, Sarah stood beside Prince Carix, still wearing the neural crown, a sight that caused visible distress among the council members. This is unprecedented. Councillor Mix's biolights flashed patterns of protest. A human wearing the crown of thought, accessing our most sacred technologies. Your Radiance, surely you see the danger. The only danger I see, Carix responded coldly, is the betrayal that nearly cost us everything. Commander Chen's actions saved not only my life, but quite possibly our empire. Sarah remained silent, observing the interplay of politics and prejudice. Through the neural crown, she could sense undercurrents of fear, pride, and something deeper, a profound uncertainty about change itself. Councillor Vex, the suspected traitor, maintained an outward calm. While we are grateful for the commander's assistance, we cannot ignore the larger implications. Our isolation has protected us for millennia. Opening ourselves to humanity means exposure to their conflicts, their limitations, their chaos. Their innovation, Carix countered. Their adaptability. Their courage to face the unknown. His biolights pulsed with intensity. We have hidden behind our technological superiority for so long that we've forgotten how to evolve. Sarah felt a subtle shift through the neural crown. A warning. Someone in the chamber was accessing restricted systems. Her eyes met Carrick's briefly, a silent communication passing between them. Perhaps she spoke for the first time, her voice carrying clearly through the chamber. The council would be interested in a demonstration of human-Zexian cooperation. Vex leaned forward slightly. What kind of demonstration? The kind that reveals truth. Sarah's fingers moved subtly, interfacing with the palace systems through the crown. Like the truth about who really gave the Drachnids access to our defense protocols. The chamber's holographic displays suddenly came to life, showing communication logs, security footage, and encrypted data streams, all pointing directly to Vex and 3 other council members. Impossible. Vex stood, his biolights chaotic. These records were purged. By Zexian methods, yes. Sarah smiled slightly. But human coding follows different patterns. We specialize in finding what others try to hide. The evidence was irrefutable. The neural crown had allowed Sarah to bypass the traitors' sophisticated security measures, using human programming principles to reconstruct what they thought was destroyed. The chamber erupted into chaos. Guards materialized to secure the accused council members. But Vex had one last card to play. You prove our point, he shouted. Humans are dangerous precisely because they think differently. They'll change everything we are. Change is not death. Carrick's voice cut through the chaos. But stagnation is. He turned to address the entire council. Look at what we accomplished together in one day. A hybrid defense system that repelled our greatest enemy. New ways of thinking that exposed corruption in our highest ranks. This is not weakness. This is evolution. Sarah felt something shift in the chamber's psychic atmosphere. Through the neural crown, she sensed the other council members' resistance beginning to crack. The universe is changing, she added quietly. The Drachnids are expanding. Other threats will follow. No species, no matter how advanced, can remain unchanged forever. Then what do you propose? Asked Councillor Lix, one of the younger members. How do we preserve who we are while embracing what we could become? Carrick's moved to stand closer to Sarah, his biolights synchronizing unconsciously with the patterns of her neural activity through the crown. We begin by acknowledging that strength can take many forms. Commander Chen has proven that humans are not inferior, merely different. And in those differences lies possibility. The human speaks of evolution. Another council member noted. Perhaps it is time for the Zexian Empire to evolve as well. The debate continued for hours, but Sarah could sense the tide turning. Through the neural crown, she felt the subtle shifts in the chamber's psychic consensus. Change was coming, not through force or demand, but through demonstration and understanding. As the session finally drew to a close, Carrick's turned to Sarah. There will be resistance. Centuries of isolation cannot be undone in a day. Good thing humans are patient, she smiled. When we believe in something worth waiting for. The prince's biolights shifted to a pattern she'd never seen before, one that made the other council members exchange significant looks. Commander, he said softly, I believe we have one final challenge ahead of us. Only one. Showing both our peoples that the impossible is only the beginning. Hearts beyond stars. The Zexian Palace's observatory spire stretched toward the stars, its crystalline walls offering an unobstructed view of the galaxy. Sarah stood at its peak, the neural crown humming softly as it processed the countless streams of data flowing through the palace networks. In the week since the council meeting, changes had rippled through the empire like waves in a cosmic ocean. The Drachnids are moving again, Carrick said, joining her at the viewport. His biolights pulsed with measured concern. Our long-range sensors detect fleet movements along 3 different sectors. They're testing us, Sarah replied, her fingers tracing patterns in the holographic display. Probing for weakness after their failed attack. Through the neural crown, She could feel the complex dance of Zexian defense systems, now seamlessly integrated with human tactical protocols. Let them test. The prince's voice carried a new confidence. They'll find something they don't expect. The holographic display expanded, showing the positions of newly established human-Zexian joint defense platforms, where once the Empire had relied solely on its technological superiority. Now it incorporated human adaptability and unconventional thinking. The results were extraordinary. The Council's Integration Committee reports success beyond their projections. Carrix continued. Our scientists are already incorporating human problem-solving methodologies into their research, and your Earth's universities are eager to begin exchange programs. Sarah smiled, remembering the shocked faces of human diplomats when they received the first technical data packages from the Zexians. Change comes quickly when both sides are willing to learn. Indeed, Carrix's biolights shifted to that unique pattern she'd come to recognize, one that appeared only when they were alone. Though some changes are more challenging than others, Sarah felt it then, through the neural crown. A complex swirl of emotions from the prince, no longer hidden behind walls of imperial protocol. Your radiance, Carrix, he corrected softly. After everything we've achieved together, I think we're beyond titles. Carrix, she acknowledged, turning to face him. Your people still have concerns about too much human influence. Some do, he agreed. Just as some of your people fear losing human identity in the face of our technology. But fear of change cannot stop evolution. You taught me that. The observatory's crystals hummed with sudden energy as a priority alert came through. Sarah's mind merged with the palace systems through the crown, processing the information instantly. Multiple Drachnid signatures, she reported. Largest fleet movement we've seen yet. They're making their play. Carrix's biolights flared with battle readiness. Then let's show them what evolution looks like. Throughout the Empire, human and Zexian ships moved in perfect coordination. The neural crown transmitted Sarah's tactical insights directly to the fleet commanders, while Zexian psychic technology allowed for instant strategic adjustments. The Drachnids expected to find a weakened empire, divided by internal strife. Instead, they encountered something unprecedented. Two species fighting as one, combining Zexian precision with human unpredictability. From the observatory, Sarah and Carrix directed the defense. Through their shared connection, strategies flowed like water, each compensating for the other's blind spots. Human ships executed maneuvers that Zexian tacticians would never have considered, while Zexian technology allowed for precision that human pilots could only dream of. The battle was over in hours. The Drachnid fleet, faced with defenses they couldn't predict and tactics they couldn't counter, retreated in disarray. In the aftermath, as celebration erupted throughout the Empire, Sarah moved to remove the neural crown. Carrix's hand caught hers, gentle but firm. Keep it, he said softly. It was never meant to be just a symbol of authority. It's a bridge between minds, between species, between possibilities. Carrix, Sarah's voice held a note of warning. The Council will adapt, as we all must. His biolights pulsed with determination. You asked me once why I rejected every potential match, every attempt at alliance. The truth is, I was waiting for something I couldn't define. Someone who could challenge everything I thought I knew. Through the neural crown, Sarah felt the full weight of his meaning. It wasn't just about political alliance or military cooperation. It was about fundamental change, about two different species discovering that their differences made them stronger together. The old stories, she said carefully, speak of impossible things, bridges between stars, connections that transcend species. Perhaps, Carrix's biolights shifted to that unique pattern once more. It's time we wrote new stories. Stories about how the impossible becomes possible when we dare to evolve together. Sarah felt the truth of it. In the neural crown's hum, in the stars wheeling overhead, in the subtle resonance between human determination and Zexian wisdom. The universe was vast and full of challenges, but facing them alone was no longer necessary. "Together, then," she said, her hand finding his, human warmth meeting Zexian bioluminescence. "Let's show the galaxy what's possible." Above them, the 3 moons of the Zexian homeworld cast their light through the crystalline walls, creating patterns that seemed to mirror the convergence of 2 different species' hopes and dreams. In the distance, stars beckoned with new possibilities, new challenges, new horizons to explore. The story of humanity and the Zexian Empire was just beginning, and like all the best stories, it started with an impossible chance and the courage to take it.